Greetings, I'm Martha Zavala, President of the League of Women Voters, Pasadena area. Welcome to League at Night. We draw the lines to power the vote, and by the end of today's session, that should mean something to you. Thank you for joining us today. You are officially helping the League of Women Voters launch its national redistricting campaign, People Powered Fair Maps. As you may know, the League is a nonpartisan national organization whose mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. People Powered Fair Maps is focused on creating fair political maps nationwide. The program includes advocacy, education, organizing, mobilizing, and partnering with community groups in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. Our event today focuses on how fair maps can lead to better and more equitable representation in Congress, your state legislature, your county, and in your city. Our speakers tonight will be Derric Taylor, a commissioner on California's Citizens Redistricting Commission, and Mr. Giovanni Hernandez, the California Redistricting Program Manager for the National Latino Elected and Appointed Officials Educational Fund. We truly are privileged to have such knowledgeable and expert speakers. They will describe the process of redistricting, explain what a community of interest is, you'll know what that is by the end of tonight, and how you can influence the structural impact of your vote for the next 10 years, just through your participation in the process. And this is worth repeating. You can influence the structural impact, not your single vote, but the structural impact of your vote for the next 10 years through your participation in redistricting. So listen carefully to our speakers as they share how you can ensure the health of our representative democracy. After their presentations, you'll have an opportunity to get answers to your questions during an interactive Q&A session. I encourage you all to participate by entering questions in the Q&A. There's a feature at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A basically. Please contribute to our evening by asking questions. The Q&A session will be followed by a short update on the apportionment numbers just released by the Census Bureau with information you need to do your part to power the vote through participation in redistricting. Then we will invite you to take action to help pass legislation designed to ensure fair and free elections nationwide. We believe that all voters across the U.S. should have the same access to the ballot box, regardless of the state you live in. So stay tuned to help us fight voter suppression, and please stay for our entire session because we would like to invite you to our next event. Be advised that Pasadena Media is live broadcasting the event on Access TV, and the video will be posted on our League's YouTube channel by tomorrow. Please remember to use the Q&A feature to enter your questions. After both our speakers have finished their presentations, your questions will be answered. And now it gives me pleasure to introduce our first presenter, Derric Taylor. He is currently an investigator with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. As an investigator, Mr. Taylor ensures that investigations are completed in a just and equitable manner in a wide variety of categories ranging from assaults to computer crimes. He received his BA in accounting from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and a master's degree in crime, law, and society from the University of California at Irvine. Mr. Taylor has served California communities for over 25 years. He is an active volunteer in the Los Angeles and San Gabriel Valley areas, serving as a mentor and coach, among other duties. And he is registered with the Republican Party. So, Commissioner Taylor, please help us understand why we should care about redistricting.
Thank you, Martha, for that introduction. And I hope I can shed some light on this very subject. Kitty, if you have a chance, can you start your presentation? Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting the California Citizens Redistricting Commission to present at your meeting. My name, as previously stated, is Derric Taylor, and I'm one of the 14 commissioners selected to draw the new electoral district lines following the 2020 census. Before I begin with the formal presentation, I want to share a bit about myself and why I chose to apply to be on the commission. I'm a married father of 3, currently living in Los Angeles. I was born in Los Angeles, but I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. So I have deep roots to this very community I'm speaking to right now. As I raise my kids, I often speak to them about civic engagement and having a say in our democracy. So when I heard that there was an opportunity to apply for the California Citizen Redistricting Commission, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to put my money where my mouth is and to exhibit the behavior I want my children to one day conduct themselves. And I also thought, as I contemplated applying for the commission, that as a part of democracy, it would be a great opportunity for my community to be directly tied in to the workings of our government. So I thought if I was fortunate enough to be seated, that my realm of influence would be able to say that they know someone that is a part of the process, and that could have a positive effect on my community. And for those reasons, among a few others, I chose to apply and was fortunate enough to be seated on the commission. So that being said, in this redistricting basic presentation, we'll be going over who the commission is, what we do, and how you can get involved in the process. Next slide, please. As a friendly reminder, California Government Code Section 8253, parentheses 3, strictly forbids commissioners and staff from taking public input outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting or official public input meeting. However, at any point, you're more than welcome to visit our website at wedrawthelineca.org to provide input. You will find instructions on how to do so under the public comment section. Next slide, please. What is redistricting? We are trying really hard to make redistricting sexy. The word is hard enough to say on its own, but it's rather challenging. Redistricting is defined as drawing new boundary lines that determine which Californians are represented by each electoral district. Next slide, please. You might be wondering why we have to redraw districts every 10 years. It is important to note that a lot changes in those 10 years. Communities change, which include priorities, interests, goals, and the makeup of a community. People are born and die and move, and they move within California and out of California. Communities grow and shrink. Areas where there once was roughly the same number of people become unequal. These are some of the reasons districts need to be redrawn. As communities change, the districts need to be updated to reflect those changes. Next slide, please. Your voice matters. One of the greatest powers that the people of California have is to elect their own representatives to conduct the business of their government. How the district boundaries are configured can make the difference between empowering and maximizing the voter's voice or minimizing and muting those same voices. In most other states, politicians redraw districts and often end up drawing safe districts for themselves to allow them to stay in office. Redistricting has been used at times to exclude communities from political power. By fully participating in and monitoring the upcoming redistricting processes, more communities may have the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Speaking up about your community is critical to help keep your community whole to the most extent possible. This ensures that your voice is heard by your elected leaders when making decisions such as the quality of life and funding for your child's education or determining your tax rates. Your input is valuable in shaping the new political boundaries. Next slide, please. How redistricting affects you. We thought it would be beneficial for us to break down how redistricting affects you directly. Power to the people. The Voters' First Act was historic in California. It transferred the power of drawing district maps away from politicians and gave it to the people. You can champion your issues. Having the opportunity to elect representatives that champion your issues is important in a state like California, where issues can vary drastically from one street to the next. Northern California might champion environmental and economic issues, while Central California might champion water and agricultural issues, and Southern California might champion issues dealing with transportation, housing, and employment. Funding priorities. Tied to the issue of elected representatives that champion your issues, you might want to elect representatives that have your financial interest at heart. When the time comes to build a budget, you will want a representative fighting to ensure your community gets the financial resources it deserves for various services such as education, water, and fire protection. Community boundaries. The redistricting process is all about drawing lines and determining which communities get grouped into districts. Your input in this process is essential to help commissioners understand where your community starts and ends. Redistricting in California is one of the few civic activities that any Californian can provide input to regarding their community that ultimately impacts the law and regulations, tax structure, how funding is distributed, and which services are provided. Next slide, please. The US Constitution requires that every American receive as close to equal representation as possible in government. As populations of districts change over time, it can leave some people overrepresented and others underrepresented in government. Redistricting evens out the population between districts. After the federal government publishes updated census information, California must redraw the boundaries of congressional, state senate, state assembly, and state board of equalization districts so that the districts correctly reflect the latest count of the state's population. Redistricting is based on the idea that each of our voices should be represented fairly by creating districts that have the same number of people. Census results are used to draw new maps every 10 years to account for the ways that populations have changed and moved across the states and districts. At the federal level, reapportionment takes place to reallocate US House seats among the states. This too is done after each national census to ensure that seats are held by the states in proportion to the size of their population. California currently has 53 House seats. This has changed since we just got the new reapportionment numbers to 52. Historically, legislatures have drawn maps that allows them to choose their constituents rather than enabling constituents to choose their representatives. This former system undermined the concept of fair representation, which is to give people the power to choose their representatives. Next slide, please. Thank you. We have talked about how redistricting affects you, and now we will explain why independent redistricting matters. Democracy depends on voters having the opportunity to choose their representatives. When elected officials redraw the lines of their own districts, they get to design their own territory and choose who their voters are. The slide highlights key terms in redistricting to help you understand why it is important to delegate the power of redistricting to the people. Gerrymandering happens when the election district boundaries are drawn in a way that gives a particular set of people, like a political party or racial group, an unfair political advantage over another. This graph shows how in a jurisdiction with 50 people, 60% orange and 40% purple, 5 districts can be drawn in multiple ways, but it's not always fair. The first two examples show 2 ways to draw districts in a fair manner where the districts are drawn to reflect the population proportionally. The 2 examples on the far right show ways to draw district maps in a manner that does not reflect the population fairly. This is referred to as gerrymandering. This is why independent commissions like this were created to remove the politics from the process and focus on the people. Next slide, please. Line drawing criteria. The commission must follow these criteria in this order when drawing district maps. Districts must be of nearly equal population to comply with the US Constitution. Districts must comply with the Voting Rights Act to ensure that minorities have a fair opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. Districts must be drawn contiguously so that all parts of the district are connected to each other. Districts must minimize the division of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest to the extent possible. Districts should be geographically compact such that the nearby areas of population are not bypassed for more distant populations. This requirement refers to density and not shape. Where practical, each Senate district should be comprised of 2 complete and adjacent assembly districts. Board of Equalization districts should be comprised of 10 complete and adjacent state Senate districts. In addition, the place of residence of an incumbent or political candidate may not be considered in the creation of a map, and districts may not be drawn for the purposes of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, political candidate, or political party. Next slide, please. We are one of many redistricting efforts occurring in California. The commission is redrawing district lines for state offices, while counties, cities, school districts, water districts, and community college districts are also redrawing their districts at the same time. We wanted to bring this to your attention because different efforts are happening simultaneously, and it can be confusing. Aside from being involved in the state redistricting process, we encourage you to also be involved in your local redistricting efforts. Next slide, please. A little bit of history. Prior to 2010, legislatures in California drew the lines. Failed to properly draw the lines, the court drew the lines. In 2008, California voters passed Proposition 11, the Voters First Act, authorizing the creation of an independent commission to draw new district lines for the state Senate, state assembly, and Board of Equalization. In 2010, Voters First Act for Congress added the responsibility of drawing congressional districts to the commission. Our goal as a commission is to spread the word that the people's role did not end with being counted in the census, and to community input to assist us in the process of drawing new district lines. The 2010 Redistricting Commission was California's first independent commission. The 2020 Redistricting Commission is building upon their work and will leave behind detailed documents to assist the 2030 Commission when they perform their duties. Other states with independent commissions include Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Michigan, Montana, and Washington, with several other states in the process of considering their own. Next slide, please. The commissioners all went through a rigorous application process that attracted over 20,000 applicants in 2019. After initial review, over 2,000 individuals completed a supplemental application. After a very thorough and public review, 120 applicants, which included 40 Democrats, 40 Republicans, and 40 others that did not affiliate with those two parties, were invited to interview, from which 60, 20 Democrats, 20 Republicans, and 20 others were chosen to present to the legislature. The California legislature was allowed to remove no more than 24 candidates, 8 from each of those candidate pools, leaving a total of 36. The first 8 members were 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 2 others not affiliated with those parties. They were selected in a random public drawing that occurred in July of 2020. I was one of the commissioners selected in that random drawing. The final 6 members, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 others not affiliated, were then carefully selected by the first 8 commissioners in August of 2020, taking several considerations into account to include political party, geography, race, gender, and expertise. Next slide, please. And this is your California Citizens Redistricting Commission in all of our glory at your service. The commissioners are diverse in geography as they are in opinions and expertise. There are 7 from Northern California, 7 from Southern California, 8 women and 6 men. We range in age from the 30s to the 60s, and I'm somewhere in the middle. There are NGO leaders, engineers, pastors, law enforcement officers, political scientists, a lawyer, and public servants. Join us at one of our commission meetings. They are currently all held online due to COVID-19. Instructions and a link for attending our online meetings are available on our website. Next slide, please. After the education sessions, and this is one of our education sessions, the commission will hold public input meetings and accept community input and public testimony to assist in drawing the new electoral maps. The commission will draw maps for the 4 different governmental bodies: Congress 52, State Senate 40, State Assembly 80, and the Board of Equalization. We've used an example from Sacramento to demonstrate what the different maps look like for each type, for each district. Next slide, please. From February to May and on to June, possibly to we are in our decision-making process, we are conducting these redistricting basic presentations to educate the public about the redistricting process. We had divided the state into 11 outreach zones, A through K, to better manage our outreach efforts and to build relationships with community groups. We are eager to engage with all communities. We are more than happy to set up a redistricting basic presentation with any group that requests one. We plan to have this presentation available in video form in case groups would prefer that option. Next slide, please. And this is very important. What Martha touched on earlier. When drawing maps, we have to be mindful of communities of interest. We can obtain the city and county information, but we need the communities of interest information from Californians. Communities of interest are defined as concentrated population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. Examples include areas in which the people share similar living standards, have similar cultures, use the same transportation facilities, have similar work opportunities, or have access to the same media. People can belong to multiple communities of interest. Keep in mind that a community of interest is not the same as a district, but communities of interest are key building blocks of districts. Some ways to describe your community are the geography, which are waterways, rural, urban, and mountain areas, boundaries, which are cities, towns, counties, and school areas, and other things that you have in common with your neighbors. Next slide, please. Your input is vital to the success of the commission. We've identified the ways you can participate in 3 simple steps. Describe your community. Tell us about your community. What are your shared interests? What brings you together? What is important to your community? Are there nearby areas you want to be in a district with? Are there nearby areas you do not want to be in a district with? Why or why not? Draw your community on a map. Send your testimony directly to the commission. All this can be done by using an online tool that allows you to describe, draw, and send your input to the commission by visiting drawmycacommunity.org. And that's commonly referred to as the COI tool. And that can be found at drawmycacommunity.org as well as on our website. Next slide, please. Ways to provide public input. Again, this is very important. You can provide public input to the commission in several ways, including submitting your input through the Communities of Interest Mapping tool, the COI tool, by visiting our website at redrawthelinesca.org, by emailing us, by phoning us, or by postal mails. You can use snail mail. In addition to English, the online COI tool is also available in Spanish, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Vietnamese, Tagalog, Korean, Armenian, Farsi, Arabic, Russian, Japanese, Punjabi, and Khmer. Next slide, please. COVID-19 has delayed many things, including our ability to access census data to help us draw district maps. On February 12, 2021, the Census Bureau announced it would deliver redistricting data to all states by September 30th, 2021. And in March, the Census Bureau announced it would provide the census data in a legacy format in late August. So any delay after July 31st in the state receiving the census data means that the Commission's final map will be due after December 15th. We are working with the legislature and others to minimize the impact of the delays on the 2022 elections. Next slide, please. The U.S. Census Bureau continues to update us about the expected availability of census data. We will adjust our timeline as needed. So our hope is, or our goal is based on the information we have, is that from February to May, we'll be out with educational presentations. June to August, we'll have public input meetings, and that'll be followed by the census information, hopefully. Public input meetings will happen, and law drawing sessions will happen maybe around October to December, and this is all fluid based on when we receive the information. Draft maps, according to this timeline and the information we have right now, somewhere between in November to December. After the draft maps, we'll have public input meetings regarding those draft maps and further line drawing sessions. District maps will be released, and somewhere between December and February, final district maps to the Secretary of State. Again, this is all fluid based on when we will receive the census data. Next slide, please. And just as a final reminder is required, California Government Code Section 8253(3) strictly forbids commissioners and staff from taking public input outside of a regularly scheduled commission meeting or official public input meeting. However, at any point, you are more than welcome to visit our website at redrawthelinesca.org to provide input. You will find instructions on how to do so under the public comment section. Next slide. And because we want to engage the public in the redistricting process, we are conducting educational sessions like today's presentation prior to going out for public input. To request an educational session, please contact the Commission by emailing marcy.kaplan@crc.ca.gov. And more information is also available on the Commission website at redrawthelinesca.org. Thank you very much. You can find us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Taylor. That was an excellent and informative presentation. I think that with the information you gave people, they are really realizing the importance of redistricting. We are going to have a few questions for you, and we will get to them after our next presenter, Mr. Giovanni Hernandez. So I'll be seeing you back in a little while.
Yes, you will.
And now, thank you so much. And now it gives me some pleasure to introduce Mr. Hernandez, the son of Salvadorian immigrants. He was born and raised in the Pico Union community of Los Angeles. He is a first-generation college graduate from UC Santa Cruz, and he studied political science. Mr. Hernandez has worked and served his community as a children's social worker, a labor organizer, and as an educational advocate. He organized parents in the Los Angeles region to help improve the public education system for all children. He joined the NALEO Educational Fund in 2018 and led the organization's census initiatives to promote a full count of the Latino population in Los Angeles County. Mr. Hernandez now serves as the California Redistricting Program Manager at the NALEO Educational Fund, mobilizing Latinos to participate in California's 2021 redistricting process. So, Mr. Hernandez, please tell us why it's so important for underserved communities such as low-wealth families, immigrants, and essential workers to get involved.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to just thank you, Ms. Marta Zavala, and the rest of the League's leadership team for thinking of us and inviting us to speak this evening. We have collaborated in the past with this chapter on voter education, naturalization workshops, and census outreach. So we greatly value your partnership and your efforts to inform your membership and all stakeholders on this critical issue facing all Californians, which is how can we ensure that we achieve fair representation for all Latinos and all Californians through the redistricting process. I am also honored to be here alongside Commissioner Taylor. Thank you for your service and leadership on behalf of all Californians. Once again, for all the viewers out there, my name is Giovanni Hernandez, and I am the California Redistricting Program Manager with the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, NALEO Educational Fund. Next slide, please. And so at the NALEO Educational Fund, our mission is to facilitate the full Latino participation in the American political process from citizenship to public service. With our mission in mind, redistricting naturally is one of our top priorities for the organization. Latinos are the second largest population group in California, about 40% of the population across the state. If Latinos are not part of the dialogue, an important part of California will be missing from the process. Next slide, please. My presentation this evening is a rather short one. I'm just going to briefly talk about what our redistricting work will look like for our organization. As Commissioner Taylor just explained, the California Citizens Redistricting Commission will draw congressional and state redistricting lines that will shape our democracy for the next decade. Our Latinos Draw the Lines campaign is an effort to mobilize Latino community members to participate during the State Commission's redistricting process. One important component of the campaign is a series of upcoming workshops where we hope to partner with other organizations who work closely and are seen as trusted messengers by the Latino community in their area. The workshops will offer basic education about the redistricting process, training to organizations and community leaders on how to define their communities of interest, or COI for short, as we've heard. Also, trainings on drawing COI maps and technical assistance on how to effectively testify before California's Citizens Redistricting Commission. We will be offering these workshops in English and Spanish. Currently, this work is set to take place virtually. We will focus this work in 7 regions with large concentrations of Latinos across the state. These regions are the Bay Area, Central Coast, the Central Valley, Inland Empire, Orange County, San Diego, and of course, Los Angeles County. And within the Los Angeles County region, we have priority communities or neighborhoods, with the San Gabriel Valley being one of them. We are in the process of developing the materials and the curriculum for these trainings and learning about who we will partner with in the above mentioned regions to execute these workshops. Our organization is also engaging in one other activity. California is a very diverse state, and we want to make sure that the lines that are drawn provide fair representation for all our diverse communities. So we are going to also be working on a unity mapping effort where we will get together with partners in the Black community and in the Asian Pacific Islander community to see if we can come up with maps that protect the voting rights and the electoral opportunities for all of these different groups. Next slide, please. In addition to our statewide redistricting efforts that I mentioned in the previous slide, we are also currently monitoring very closely the redistricting process for the County of Los Angeles. As many of you may already know, Los Angeles County has 5 supervisorial districts serving the county's 88 cities and more than 100 unincorporated areas. You can learn more and stay up to date with the county's redistricting process by checking out their webpage at redistricting.lacounty.gov. I am also aware that this league chapter serves about 12 cities across the San Gabriel Valley within the County of Los Angeles. So I certainly would like to encourage everyone watching to also take the time to learn about the different redistricting efforts taking place at your most local level where you live, because there may be redistricting taking place within the city you live in and with your local school district as well. Next slide, please. So how can you partner with us on our redistricting efforts? We are launching, as you heard, the Latinos Draw the Lines campaign, and there are many opportunities for you to work with us as we move forward to mobilize the Latino community to participate. You can receive and send out updates on the redistricting process. Let us know if you would like to receive those updates so that you can then forward them along to your networks. I shall be providing some email contacts in the next slide. You can also co-host a webinar on the basics of redistricting, where you can provide basic education with your community members and stakeholders. I had also mentioned to you all about working to help Latino community members articulate and submit testimony on their communities of interest. So you can co-host a communities of interest workshop that will help mobilize community members and prepare them to provide that testimony. Again, we will be offering these workshops and trainings in English and Spanish. And lastly, you can also participate in advocacy efforts with the Commission in regards to providing public input on the draft maps or any other matter. We have started a conversation already with Ms. Martha Zavala and her team about how we might be able to partner on co-hosting a COI workshop in the near future for the San Gabriel Valley region. So stay tuned, everyone. Next slide, please. As promised, I am providing these email contacts of my wonderful colleagues that all form part of the California redistricting team for our organization. Please don't hesitate in reaching out to us. We're happy to be of help. So in conclusion, I want to express my gratitude once again for the invitation to speak this evening. I also want to thank all the viewers who tuned in. I hope we can work together to help ensure that California's democracy is responsive and accountable to Latinos and to all Californians. So that concludes my very brief presentation. But before we commence the Q&A portion of the program, I'd like to bring back Commissioner Taylor on camera for a very brief conversation. Commissioner Taylor, once again, it is an honor to be joining you today, and we cannot thank you enough for your service. I appreciate all the work and thoughtfulness that you and the rest of the Commission are putting into engaging the community in this redistricting process. From our civic engagement work, we have learned that community members will be more likely to engage in civic activities if they are accessible. From our redistricting work in the last cycle, we found that some barriers to participate in hearings were that some hearings were held at the same time where Latinos with work or certain family responsibilities could not participate. And in some cases, Latinos who wanted to testify at community of input hearings had to wait several hours just to participate. So we also know that many Latino community members are also not yet fully fluent in English. The commission is taking a thoughtful approach to designing the public input hearings. So how is the commission going to eliminate barriers to community participation and ensure that community members can provide input in a manner that is as accessible and as easy as possible?
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, for your question. And you're absolutely correct. The Voters First Act put the design of these district lines into the people's hands. And so that fact, by the very nature then, it wants to return the power to the people. So access of community members then becomes tantamount. So it is with deliberate intention that this commission has went about the development of what, as you mentioned, the public input design. And that subcommittee was designed so that these very issues that you just mentioned can be addressed, so that when we roll out with our public input meetings, that what has been a barrier to input in the past, such as the timing of a meeting and the language of a meeting, can be addressed. Because again, we want to feel that the drawing of these district maps is collaborative, and that input is sought after, it's needed, and it's desired, and we want that input. We are not a success if we don't have the input from all of our community members, including our Latino members, whose population numbers are just increasing. So the purpose of the public design for those input meetings is so that those very issues can be addressed. And one of the things that I'm especially proud of with this cycle is the community of interest tool, the COI tool. And what I like about the COI tool is that it can be done in your home. And again, we understand that there is a digital divide and there are barriers to technology, but it also gives us an opportunity to reach so many people at so many different times in their homes. And it was able to be developed in Spanish, among other languages. So where an individual, a community member, may not be able to make a meeting, and he may not be able to make the public input meeting, but he may be able to sit in his living room at any given time and be able to design, to draw, and submit his community of interest. And we get that precious public input that we need to help draw these district maps. So it is this commission's purpose to make these issues that were mentioned, to overcome some of these obstacles so that more people, more Latino people, can participate in this process. I would like to, as we're speaking, I would ask you, what are some of the other mechanisms that our commission could use to help reach these members of our community so that they can more actively participate in our process?
No, absolutely. Thank you for that, Commissioner, and for elaborating further as well. Really appreciate that. And to answer your question, but also just in addition to what you already stated, Latino communities and all underrepresented groups feel seen, heard, and acknowledged when representatives take their voices into consideration. And so ensuring that specific zones that you highlighted, right, in your presentations, the different zones of A through K across the state offer communities the opportunities to provide input at community of interest public hearings per geographical zone. That creates community members to feel more motivated, right, and engaged to participate in advocacy and civic engagement efforts. And so definitely, particularly when it's centered around their own specific neighborhoods, communities, geographic zones, this just creates a sense of safety and personalizes the process of providing input during this redistricting process. So hopefully that answered your question of, again, just being able to provide those opportunities in all of the different geographical regions that you mentioned.
I'm in absolute agreement. The opportunity to speak to this chapter to where I have my own roots as a graduate of John Muir High School from the Pasadena area, and it gives that sense of community, that I am a community member. I'm encouraging people to be a part of this process. I'm a direct touch point of our democratic process. So we want that same feeling for the entirety of our California community.
Absolutely. No, thank you for acknowledging that, and also, inquiring what other recommendations we would have. And again, we cannot thank you enough and the rest of the commission for all of your work and service on behalf of all Californians. And we see, how hard you all are working, and just all the thoughtfulness being put into all the long hours. We see that, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you as much. The same for your work too, Mr. Hernandez. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both. That was really great, because I think with the deep dive work that you have been doing, only you could come up with those questions for each other. But we do have some questions from our audience. First of all, let me thank Mr. Hernandez. I really appreciate the fact that you re-emphasized a point that the commissioner made, and that was that there is an LA County Redistricting Commission. And I think there is a huge part of LA County, despite the fact that we have 88 cities, there's a lot of unincorporated areas, which means that their person that they elect to represent them and to really have such a huge impact on their community is not just the surrounding incorporated cities, but it's that supervisor that manages their district and determines how to meet their needs. So we want to make sure that people really are aware of that, because your local government has a much closer relationship and immediate impact on your living conditions. Absolutely. So I'm glad you mentioned that during your presentation. So now we do have a few questions, and hopefully the way I've ordered them, we'll be able to, it'll be a neat flow here. So let me talk about the first one. Commissioner, to what degree did Californians participate in the census given COVID and all of the issues related to the immigrant population, over the last 4 years? Was the participation lower or higher than expected?
It would be hard to gauge what the Census Bureau's expectation of what the census should have been, or what they foresaw given the conditions. What they have built into the data is they have certain quality measures. So I wouldn't look at it. I wouldn't look at it from the standpoint of what the participation level for us as we receive the information from the census, we view it as how good is the information? What is the quality of the census information that we receive good enough to do our work in a confident manner? And that's what we've been assured of. We've been assured that we will get the best statistics possible, and that's what we will have to go on. So we're primarily concerned with the quality of that census information, and that's what will be the gauge as we go further with our work in drawing the maps.
Giovanni, did you have any other perspective?
Yes. So it's there are a lot of variables at play, right? It's really hard to just give a straight answer on that. It's not so black and white. There's still a lot of information that is still being processed, right? Typically, also after a census, there are deep dives that demographers and academics do to figure out if there was an undercount of certain populations, right? And that takes time, right? And so that's something that we'll know more in time, right? So it's really hard to answer that. But that same day that the apportionment counts came out, our organization did put out a press release, right? And we are surprised just by the apportionment data that was released. The figures reflect the second slowest population growth in our nation's history. And so, we're waiting on more information that the Bureau will continue to produce, right? To understand the quality of these data sets that are being put out. So, I would just echo what the commissioner said as well. And, we're waiting on more information to keep analyzing what happened.
I'm also trying to see if anyone has heard any information about any expectation that they would make any adjustments to the data they already have. And I haven't really heard anything like that. But it's interesting to note that I'll have each of you answer this one too, that you have generated interest in our attendees. They want to know which groups, do you have to be like an official group to get a presentation? Can it be a political group? In other words, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, do you have any constraints?
We do not, as a commission. We present to the groups that request educational presentation. All citizens of California have a right to this information. It is our information, so we do not limit based on political information, political affiliation, what group we will give a educational presentation to.
For our scope of work that we're moving forward with for our Latinos Draw the Lines campaign, we specifically are working with more of your community-based organizations, nonprofits. Our work of Latinos Draw the Lines is under our 501c3 nonprofit. So it is we're not really focusing on presenting or training outside of your community-based organizations, community leaders that are not affiliated with, explicitly with political parties, right? And so again, that's the focus of our campaign. We also, this is a very delicate process, and we also just don't want to create any appearances or illusions of working specifically with any political party. So again, we're focusing more on the grassroots and building that capacity within the community and with community-based organizations.
Do you have any expectations for any particular groups or communities to come and provide input? I guess what we're trying to find out is, are there different types that you want to look at? Are you doing any specific outreach if they don't come to you? Let's say, you're expecting from a particular group and you just don't get that call.
So, the commission, we're not looking for a specific group or person. In an ideal world, in utopia, I would want every individual Californian to submit their public input, to get their community of interest tool, so that everyone had a piece of the process, had a piece of this collaborative a process. We're not soliciting any particular group. We're not soliciting any particular person. We want to get the involvement of all Californians. So if through some analysis we thought that there was a particular hole in our outreach, or a particular community wasn't represented in the input that we received, I think we would make a conscious effort to try to spur that community. But it is all Californians. We want to appeal and reach to all Californians.
Excellent. Giovanni, I know that you had mentioned you are on a specific mission, and I understand you're doing community outreach because your entire organization is on a national campaign, very similar to ours, but we have the benefit of being local leagues, so we can focus on our local area, and we leave our other local chapters, 700 of them throughout the U.S., to actually do a deep dive in the local community. I have another question here. They're saying we already know that many school children who did not have access to the internet had great difficulty keeping up with their education. How will the commission reach out to these people, these families, who either do not have or are not comfortable with the internet?
The digital divide is a real issue, and that's something that our outreach team has to be mindful of, is mindful as we go on, as we continue on with our outreach. This is one of the next issues that we plan on to address. How do we reach those community members that don't have access to technology, or is reticent of technology? So that is one of the issues. We're currently developing what we call a paper COI tool. So that's going to mimic the digital process except on paper, and we'll be able to distribute that to community members that don't have access to technology. So that is something that we're concerned with. It's something that our outreach team is trying to address, and it's something that we want to remedy.
Great. And Giovanni, did you have anything to add? Any different perspective in your outreach?
No, we're extremely excited for the paper COI option. Something that we're definitely supportive of, and we know that it will be very beneficial across the state to be able to have that option. So providing this other option, it is something to increase accessibility among different communities to be able to participate, especially in those regions with low broadband connectivity that we know still is an issue in many rural areas across the state, et cetera, et cetera. So we're very excited to see that plan be executed.
Great. Yeah, I think that is always going to be a challenge until a lot of things change. That's going to be an issue for many things, including this one of redistricting. So I do have a couple of more questions. So after this one, there'll be just one more. There seems to be no way to satisfy all the criteria. In other words, you want to pull your hair out, because if it was a simple mathematical apportionment, of population, we would probably hurt a lot of people, harm everybody, or really harm some people. So this idea of collecting community interest information is great. So how are you going to do this in terms of, I guess they're talking about packing or cracking. Do you want to put all Latinos communities of interest in one district so that they have a guaranteed one seat? Or do you want to put them in several districts so they might win several seats or none? I think this is a gerrymandering question. So because there's some indication, or I think there were lawsuits, some people think the 2010 districts were gerrymandered.
Thank you. And that's the crucial question. That will get to the heart of the deliberations when we have all the information. We are faced with the 6 criteria when designing the districts, when drawing the maps. So there is some constraints. There are guidelines, but without getting too far forward, that is what the commission is designed for, to take that input, to look at the criteria that we have in front of us, and to design those district maps in a way that can be upheld in court, and that can withstand with legal challenge. So that is at the heart. That very question is at the heart of the matter, to take that input to design the district lines. That is what the work is, and we can do that once we have the totality of the information, as we get maximum participation in combination with those constraints.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, Giovanni, if you wanted to comment.
No, absolutely. The commissioner definitely touched on it. The California Constitution is clear on what the criteria is, right? And there is an order to it, right? There is an order of priority, right? With equal population being first, and then following, adhering to the Voting Rights Act, right? And so forth. So there are constraints, as the commissioner mentioned, and but that's why it is crucial to have voices from the community sharing their communities of interest to help build what these districts could look like, right? We often talk about communities of interest being these building blocks for developing these districts. And so, we're going to do our part to, along with our partners across the state, to really mobilize the community for that crucial community input to help design these districts.
Thanks. And I just want to bring something up about a community of interest. I was raised in East LA, and basically our community was, we shopped in Monterey Park, right across, it was like across a street, in order to, and we ended up in another city. We shopped there, and we walked to Whittier Boulevard. We stayed east of Indiana. We didn't go into necessarily Boyle Heights, and we walked or took the bus to Montebello. So there was this community that would basically do all its shopping, and kind of, if there was one show there that we would go to, because the bus took us there easily, and things like that. And so the school district also played a huge role in the people you hung out with. So if you went to that Garfield High School, for example, you kind of gravitated in that direction. So I think when you talk about a community of interest, that is what you're talking about. Do you have to take the bus to the supermarket? Do you have to, what do you do? Do you walk to everywhere you're going? So I think that's one way for people to kind of look at it, because that's where you get all your Mexican products and, the pan dulce that you eat and things like that. So I think when you start looking at a community of interest, those are some of the things that may be meaningful to me, but everybody, as the commissioner stated, has to come up with what's important to them. So there was just one more question here is, can we find out which groups locally are drawing new district lines? How do you find that out?
So as of right now, I would be unaware as to how an individual would know like which group is drawing a line. So perhaps that is something that I can inquire about. Perhaps get back to you, Ms. Zavala, and you can inform your group and your contacts how. But I don't know. I don't know how that information would transfer from one person to another, or yeah, I'm unsure. Yeah, I'm trying to play it off in my mind, but I don't. If how would you find out if your neighbor is doing the work? Let's be neighborly. Shoot.
Right. So I would look at it maybe two ways in the question, that when they say group, because it's possible that they're talking about a local community group, kind of getting together and having a consensus on where they feel they all fit in, which is something that's possible. And I kind of read it another way also, to think about any agency, public agency that's currently wrestling with drawing new lines. So I kind of took it in two different ways. I am going to talk a little bit about what people can do to get information from their own cities and local redistricting agencies. But yeah, about looking at other community groups, it's like, I think, just talking to people.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in on this, and thank you for elaborating a little bit on your interpretation of the question, Ms. Zavala. And, I can definitely say that, there are groups, right, as you put it, community groups or coalitions or civic engagement tables that may exist in different regions. So for example, like a civic engagement table for Orange County that consists of various groups that have come together to work on an issue, or a civic engagement table in the Central Valley, right, that are doing the same and are working on redistricting and submitting maps, like a map, right? So that is happening. I can definitely say that. And, like I shared in my part of the presentation, we're involved in such efforts too with our unity mapping, right? Like I mentioned, we're going to be working very closely with our partners in the Black community and in the Asian Pacific Islander community to work together to submit a unity map, right? So that's exactly what that means, right? But then there's also all these other groups that are working with their particular constituencies and demographic groups that they serve and cater to submit maps for their particular regions, or coalition groups, right? That, like I mentioned, that are coming together to mobilize the community as a collaborative and submit a map for their region. And a lot of these efforts are happening to submit maps to the state commission, but also to do so locally within their county supervisorial districts. So that is happening. I mean, we know of some partners, but it's hard to really drill down and come up with a very comprehensive list of who is all of these players that are doing this, right? Or that would be doing this and drawing a map. So, I'm not going to tell you that we have a comprehensive list of that, because we don't. We know of some folks, some partners of ours, and we're doing so with MALDEF, right? We're working very closely with MALDEF to mobilize the Latino community, and the scope of our work is to do this education work and mobilization to be able to obtain input from the Latino community to provide to MALDEF, who will submit maps on behalf of the Latinos. So I can speak on behalf of that.
Excellent. Well, I that was the last question for this evening. I want to really thank you both so much for joining us today. We're lucky to have you both working to ensure, that the democratic process gets handled, that it stays healthy and strong in California and in our local areas, because it is so important to the lives of all residents. So please think of us as your new best friend and partner. And so hopefully we will be working over the summer months from now until, there's no more opportunity to have public input. So thank you very much for joining us. And we're going to move on to the next segment of our program. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, so dear attendees, I did want to tell you that if we didn't get to your questions and you have more, please resubmit them via email to our events committee at it's events@lwv-pa.org. That hyphen is very important because you might end up in Pennsylvania. So make sure you add that hyphen between LWV-PA. And we'll get the answers for you. So please email us. And now, it's time for you to help take action and make a difference in your community. I think that my slide presentation is off a little bit. So if you can back up, Catherine. Hello? Okay. All right. So I guess the sharing of my PowerPoints is not available right now. So let me tell you to go to our website. It's lwv-pa.org. And on there, you can find out about our upcoming event, which is on May 6th. We will be talking about, I'm going to have to find what that is. I didn't want to share my PowerPoint because I'll be knocked off the internet. I have a really bad internet connection. But let me see what I have here. We actually do have a request for you to help us. There it is. It's magic. So as I had said, we did receive some information about the population statistics as a result of the 2020 census. And as Commissioner Taylor said, we lost a congressional seat. As you can see, California is still growing, but proportionately its growth is less than 6 other states. And in fact, Texas will be getting 2 more congressional seats. And other states, along with California, lost those. I do want to mention that Wyoming is the smallest state. As you can see, they're just over 500,000 people. However, Washington, D.C. is 3.2, almost 0.3 million people. And we are advocating for D.C. statehood. So, they're bigger than Wyoming. And so we think that's more equitable. Next slide, please. Once in a decade battle to redraw the U.S. political map promises to be one of the most contentious ever when it kicks off this week. Gaining a seat in Congress also means gaining a vote in the Electoral College. Migration could portend a geographic shift in the state's political identity. So hold on to your hat. We will find out in a few short months. As they was indicated, all of this has to be done before the next election in June. So next slide, please. And again, what we want you to do is actually take action. Today, you did the first thing. You're getting informed, but you need to go visit your city's website. This is one thing I can tell you, is that if you go to your city's website, usually your city clerk's office, you will be able to find out whether your city is holding any redistricting hearings, what their plans are. At bottom line, you can Google your city and with redistricting, and the information may come up in the local news. So there is a way to find out whether or not you have an advisory body or not to your city council, or if your city council is doing all of the redrawing of the lines and you want to stay glued to them, and so you can track what's happening. I know we just got some information in the chat that Pasadena, in fact, has an advisory task force to the city council that's going to be working on that. And again, remember to go in and examine those COI tools, those community of interest tools that both the State Redistricting Commission and the LA County Redistricting Commission, theirs is still under development, but the state's is ready. And on the state site, you'll see that they actually have YouTube videos, tutorials to show you how to use the product. So, it's really great. You can also submit them anonymously if you want to. You don't have to name yourself. And go ahead and map your community. As I said, I know how I used to get around when I was growing up in East LA. Involve your family, friends, and neighbors, because this is important to all of us. We all have to play our part to draw those lines. Next slide, please. And what we want you to do really is to advocate for the PEOPLE Act. It's S1, and it addresses some of the most pressing issues facing our democracy. It restores the Voting Rights Act. It modernizes our voter registration system. It's restoring voting rights to formerly incarcerated individuals, curbing partisan gerrymandering, which we talked about today, and the way California and LA County and many of our local bodies are handling it. And it also deals with making campaign contributions more transparent. So it's going at a lot of the sins, if you will, that exist in our electoral system right now. Next, please. So the US League makes it very easy for you to go to lwv.org and you click on Take Action. And it says, tell your senator to pass the For the People Act. And you can go ahead and send them a message right away. For California, it is Senators Feinstein and Padilla. But if you happen to be flying in from Utah or something, you can still use this, and it will go ahead and allow you to address your own senators. And so, and we want you to do that right now. It doesn't take anything but like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, because we've already designed that for you to make it easy. Next, please. For those of you that don't really like to work on computers, here's a telephone number. Oh, let's go back. Can we go back to that other slide? Here's a telephone number that you can actually call. If you get hold of somebody, a staff person, because you can leave a message for any of the 100 senators that we have at this number, and you just ask for your senator. If they don't answer, they have a really nice voicemail messaging system where you can just leave a message. So you can do it right away, get it off your back, do your civic duty. And we encourage you to do that right away. Next slide, please. And here is Thursday with the League on May 6th. We're going to be having a session where we're going to have Professor Sean Kennedy of the LA County Civilian Oversight Commission. And it's holding the LA County Sheriff's Department accountable. And I think for all of you who are concerned about our criminal justice system, about policing in our area, and especially if you live in the LA County jurisdiction, please join us. This is really an important factor in trying to make our communities more equitable and make it possible for everyone to live their full lives. Next slide, please. Okay, so it looks like we have that. I just wanted to please encourage you to register for our event on May 6th as soon as possible, and to share the information about our anonymous survey, which we will be launching soon. So please stay tuned. We actually have a police survey that we're going to be launching soon. And it has to do with racial profiling stops in 4 of our communities. So stay tuned, come to our website, and you'll be able to get that information. Also remember that the video of this presentation will be available on the LWV-PA YouTube channel tomorrow, courtesy of Pasadena Media. And thank you again to Commissioner Taylor and Mr. Hernandez for sharing their knowledge and commitment to fair maps. Thank you to our events and communications committees for working behind the scenes to host this event. And thank you to Anita Mackey, our question sorter, during the excellent Q&A session. Finally, to our Zoom hosts, Catherine Gadsby, Valerie Jones, Kitty Kroger, and thank you, our wonderful audience, for sharing your evening with us. Get out there and please take action.